presentation in Afrikaans. You know, coming from Stellenbosch, we do Afrikaans in a meertalige context. So I could explain things in Afrikaans and keep the slides in English, but I'll make it easier and accessible for everyone. I'm going to speak a little bit about something unusual that NASPERS does, namely work together with the university in a somewhat strange model. I'm going to talk about why it's useful, why you in particular might be interested in what we're doing, and what the idea behind this is, what this concept of open innovation is, and why large companies, especially large diverse companies like NASPERS, is, I think, doing well in pursuing this kind of innovation and research. So, pop quiz, starting with you. What is the most disruptive technology facing your business today? Anything? What? Social media. Social media has been around for 5, 6, 7 years. Surely it's not disrupting you anymore. Mobile. Okay, mobile. So I'm going to give you a nice cheat sheet. Every now and again, every year, every couple of months, there's some other new technology that's going to destroy your business. Snapchat. Okay, Snapchat. You probably see where I'm heading with this. Okay, so the simple answers to questions that get asked about every new technology. Will Snapchat make us all geniuses? No, I don't think so. Will Snapchat make us all morons? No. Will Snapchat destroy whole industries? Yes. Will Snapchat make us more empathetic? No. Will Snapchat make us less caring? No. Will teens use Snapchat for sex? Yes. Were they going to have sex anyway? Yes. Will Snapchat destroy music? And so forth. It's quite usual to be in a perpetual state of panic if you're working in the media space at the moment, because technology is changing very rapidly. And this is nice and funny, a nice XKCD joke, but there's a hidden sting in it that when new technology arrives on the scene, we most likely do not know what it's going to destroy, but we have a fair suspicion that truly useful, truly significant technology will destroy entire businesses, unless the businesses can adapt. So a chap called Niels Nielsen is actually one of the big fathers of artificial intelligence at Stanford University. Made this statement way back in 1987. So we're speaking long before the internet, long before social media, long before Snapchat, and said in the future it's clear that reading and writing, the media of that age, will be far more interactive processes. It's not clear yet what will prove necessary or useful. Just as it took several centuries to invent the index, the paper index, it will probably take us a long time to identify the stable points offered by new technology. And that's a very interesting thought. How do you, in the face of changing technology, allow yourself the space to experiment with it, think about it, look at the modalities of the new technology, to try to find those stable points where it becomes something useful? Twitter, to my mind, is a very good example. Do yourself a favor and look at the very first article that was posted on about Twitter on TechCrunch, the technology blogging site, and have a look at the comments and the complete misunderstanding of the technology and the potential usefulness and the disdain with which the platform was treated. In hindsight, we can see that it presented a new modality of communication that we might have known around the water cooler at work, but never found in a digital space or with the reach we could find with a platform like Twitter. It took us a couple of years, and even Mike Arrington, the editor of TechCrunch at that stage, said it took him quite a while to understand, to get the idea behind something like Twitter. So the question to you as business is, what are you doing to find these? Are you watching new technologies, and what are you doing to find the stable points, the interesting, useful, and necessary applications of new technology? And that, in a nutshell, is our purpose and our collaboration with industry. We see ourselves as a group of researchers, a little bit out of industry, but closely tied to industry, trying to find stability, necessity, usefulness in these unstable, these emerging, these bleeding edge technologies. Because from a university's point of view, we're working with that in our fundamental research all the time. Usually we publish and we think up new ways of improving their technology, and we don't take it that step further into contemplating how it could affect industry. And the Media Lab is placed in that gap between the fundamental research and the application in industry, taking these emerging ICT tech ideas into more applied, almost pre-commercial research, where the students that are going to present to you have business cases in mind when they think about their theses and their research. And a quote by our rector, Professor Russell Botman at Stellenbosch University, that I really like, that really speaks into the ethos of what we're trying to do at the Media Lab, is that a good university, a university like Stellenbosch, should advance from being successful in research into being significant with the research. In other words, not just doing things that are publishable and advance the frontiers of knowledge for knowledge's sake, but have create research that has some other impact in industry, commercial impact, or in society, societal impact, moving from success to significance. So this is where we see ourselves. This is one model of thinking about innovation, of dealing with new technologies and finding new usefulness of technologies. To say that ideas and new tech live somewhere along this innovation chain, and this is typically where you find traditional universities working on fundamental research, and usually at a university you have a couple of applied research areas as well. Typically your Faculty of Engineering, we've got a Department of Applied Mathematics, where we don't just do the fundamental research, but we at least try to change it into, or demonstrate how it can be practically used. In a space like the Media Lab, we take it a step further into pre-commercial research, where there needs to be a clear business case to each research topic, where the students must be able to sell their research idea or their research concept to a critical person in industry that might ask, what's the use of this? Or like the late Anthony Roux used to pepper the students with the question, how are you going to change the world with this idea? What is the significance of what you're doing? And then, of course, there's a point where university isn't really the space where we can take the innovation chain further, and where we want to take ideas into incubation, either within companies in our industry partner, where we do a tech transfer or knowledge transfer, and you take an idea further and use it in your business, or by students forming their own businesses and becoming part of the knowledge ecosystem, preferably the same ecosystem in which NASPERS is operating and collaborating on projects, and taking incubated ideas into commerce. So to get the mix right at Stellenbosch, we at the moment have 26 postgraduate students. It's a postgraduate research lab. It's sponsored by NASPERS, like Leo said, and it's a merry mix of different people. I firmly believe that the very best ideas, and really the only way in which we can understand the usefulness of emerging technology, is if you don't just have computer scientists and engineers together in a room, but you bring the socio-informaticists, the economists, the political scientists, the mathematicians into the mix to try to unpack the possible applications of tech when it emerges. Now this relates to an idea that is part of the discourse in research and innovation recently, called open innovation. And the University of California in Berkeley defines open innovation as the use of purposeful, deliberate inflow and outflow of knowledge to accelerate innovation. In other words, teaming up with somebody else, sharing knowledge and sharing insight, whether it be insight into what's happening in market or what's useful or what burning need there is in industry at the moment with another partner, in the hope that there'll be an exchange of information and knowledge that will lead to new applications and new innovation. It's the opposite of closed innovation, where everything happens in-house and where you have your own labs and teams trying to understand and pull together as much as they can and driving innovation through that. It's an attempt to tap into a larger network of experts and thinkers and skills that you might not know you need inside a company to lead towards particular innovation. So Berkeley goes further to say it's when companies cannot rely entirely on their own research, but acquire inventions, acquire IP from other companies or universities when it advances the business model. And it also places the university in a different spot. Not just advancing innovation through publication, but needing to exchange and to give up information and IP in order to advance our understanding of what's relevant, what's significant in the world. So this is what the space looks like. Well, as you probably know, looking at spaces like Spree and Touch Lab and many of the other spaces in the Naspers family, if you want to attract the millennials, you need to have different kind of space than the traditional older type of office space. So we have a fairly open and friendly space for our students and researchers to work in. And working on a bunch of interesting things. I don't have time to go into detail of all the different topics we're working on at the moment. Just a random collection of things we've recently worked on. A peer-to-peer DSTV replacement or add-on technology using peer-to-peer networking technology to transfer media with an attached business model. We had a political scientist building effectively a barometer for political sentiment for use by journalists or by politicians to see how news events let the public sentiment fluctuate around a certain topic using social media feeds. Now casting of economic indicators, being able to look at Twitter activity or mobile phone activity and to basically do pattern recognition and data analysis on that to get an idea of what consumer confidence is, or what the strength of the economy or the distribution between poor and rich is in a society. Machine learning is a strong focus at the moment. Artificial intelligence is really coming of age. We're using that for document comparison, recommendation, retrieval. There's some projects that we are collaborating closely with some of the Naspers companies at the moment. Video watermarking, rights management, things around that relates to, for example, the multi-choice and the DSTV businesses. So these are all examples of projects we work on that fits somewhere into the Naspers family, but that has a very strong research component where we can unpack emerging tech and build it into a new application and demonstrate the concept. So the message from my side today is exploit this partnership. To have a sustainable partnership with Naspers, you need to benefit from that. And the way you can benefit from that is to help us to find significant application areas. In other words, tell us what your needs are, what you see in industry, and what your technical challenges are, and how we can adapt what we do to fit into your businesses. Tap into our network. Sometimes you might have need of some expertise that you simply don't have in ours. You need pattern recognition or machine learning expertise, or you're looking for somebody. Leo this morning wanted to know, who do we have contact with that understands something about gamification and what works well in certain mobile gaming markets. And these all attach to the networks that we're involved with. Come and headhunt your talent. This is pretty much a canned hunting exercise. Talent just sitting here, waiting to be wooed into your companies. You may need one of our students' startups to do something for your business. You might be the business opportunity that one of our student startups is looking for to bring their research expertise, their idea on how to build a product or a service into the mainstream. And visit us. Come and see how we can collaborate and what we're busy with and what makes us tick at the moment. And use a space like the Media Lab as a listening post to get an idea of what's bubbling up in terms of emerging technology. Use it as a way, as a canary in the mine shaft to get an idea of what the possible next disruptive technology is, because those are the things we like to play around with, and we'd love to share what we're doing and seeing and thinking. So stay in touch. Those are my details. I'll make them available afterwards as well, and you're most welcome to come and pop in and see what we're busy with. Stellenbosch is a nice place to visit, and pass by some wine farms on your way back. You won't be disappointed. 3 of our students are, and this is just a random selection of our students, are going to do short presentations on what they're doing. Who's starting? Okay. So Leon is going to talk a little bit about his research, which is around serious gaming, or actually how you use real, actual games to help people learn something useful, in this case programming. Who's next? Lloyd will speak about 3D scanning, and related to that 3D printing, we're entering an interesting phase of the Internet of Things where it's becoming possible to capture real-life objects into the digital domain and take digital objects and make them physical using 3D printing. 3D printing is one of those technologies where we don't have a clue what the stable points, what the useful modalities are going to be. We just know that this is going to be useful in some other way. And Lloyd is looking at the scanning and the 3D reconstruction aspect behind that. And Simon is going to talk about something that has nothing to do with his research, but has to do what we call our 20% project. We encourage all of our students not just to study. We think it's a waste of time to spend 100% of your postgraduate time doing research. And we know students don't do that. They do all kinds of other stuff. And we encourage them to extend that all kinds of other stuff time into doing 20% projects that are going to make them rich and famous one day. And Simon is our chief Bitcoin evangelist at the Media Lab, and he's going to share the happy gospel about Bitcoin with you in a very enthusiastic way. So, Leon, over to you. Let's get your...
So, gamification. Gamification is the application of game design techniques onto non-gaming systems. If you think about games, I'm speaking about computer games, they are made up of various things. You can think of computer graphics, you can think of stories, audio, mechanics, and technically gamification or theoretically gamification can be any of these things applied to a non-gaming system. However, in practice, it is a very specific set of mechanics that are applied to these non-gaming systems in order to gamify them. Because you can think, it's very hard to translate a story over to your banking system. So, when I speak with, so gamification, typically is about the translation of mechanics. Now, I'm sure you've all played Mario. What is a game mechanic? It is anything that it actually takes part in order to form the gameplay. So in Mario, we've got the jump mechanic. We have Mario running from the one side of the stage to the other. You press a jump button, Mario jumps. It's important because Mario has to get to the end and there are things in his way, so he needs to be able to jump. The longer you press, the higher he jumps. Another mechanic is the Mario score. You've got a score that increases if you pick things up, you jump on enemies, or you complete a level. Now you can think one of these mechanics is easily translatable, and that is the score mechanic. If I tell you to go gamify your banking system, you're not going to be able to fit a jump button in there. But the idea of a score can easily be translated, because a score is a reward given to players for completing tasks the game designers wanted them to do. So whether this is jumping on an enemy's head or paying your loans off in time, we can easily translate that scoring mechanic to that system. So these are typically mechanics that we talk about when we speak about the gamification mechanics. As such, gamification can pretty much be applied to any mechanic that is, any metric that is measurable. Whether it's a good idea to apply to any metric is a different discussion, but it can be done. So typically, gamification is about building engagement with your users, getting them to engage with the system as much as possible. And we do this through various, what we call Skinner box techniques, things like points, badges, milestones, anything where a player gets a reward. And that then is translated into either a social aspect, some boasting thing where they can say, go onto a social network, and they can say, for example, do 100 sit-ups for 5 days in a row and get a badge. And you can put that on Facebook, and your friends can say, oh, look, he's doing exercise, I'm not, he's better than I am. And typically, there's the social networks built into these systems where your friends can be compared to your friends, and you see what they're doing, and that in turn motivates you to do what the system wants you to do. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples. Photocracy is the one I was talking about just now. It's an app that gamifies the idea of fitness. In other words, you enter any fitness activity that you've done, you complete milestones, gain levels, and achievements, and things like that. Code Academy is a similar idea applied to computer programming, whereby you are given, it's a set of lessons, and as you complete lessons, you earn badges and points, things like that. Lastly, Reddit, probably something you guys know a lot about, gamifies their commenting system, whereby every post, in Reddit, it's a website where you Any user can post a link to any other site, and other users can up or downvote these posts, and then they gain points, which they call karma. So if you post something interesting, you gain karma. Doesn't do anything, yet people do it for that reason. So there's something ingrained, psychologically ingrained within these systems that make people want to gather points, finish milestones. You can think if you have to do 50 sit-ups, and you've gone to 48 or 40, and you can pretty much stop. But if I tell you, you are 90% towards completing your next objective, which you can then share with friends, you are more likely to go and finish that thing. Stack Overflow is another example of this, which is a similar concept to Reddit's idea. It's a programming advice forum where users can up and down good topics and gain achievements and things like this. But the difference is in Stack Overflow, these points translate into rights. So, for example, if you have enough points, you gain moderator privileges, or you gain some benefit or something like that. So this is an idea of giving a player not just a mental reward, but an actual reward on the system itself. And in some places that can work, in some places can't. For example, people think of gamification as a new thing, but something like loyalty cards were gamification before the topic was popular. And there you get rewards for purchasing in a certain brand or something. Serious games, and this is actually what my research is about. Serious games are on the other side of the spectrum. They are games which have a primary purpose other than education, but they're still games. So in other words, we have a game that is hopefully fun to play, and people will play it for the sake of playing the game, but we have some other purpose for which this game is written. Typically we have advertisement, education, things like this. So I'm going to go over some examples of this. America's Army is a game written by the United States Army, which is used as a promotional tool and also as a training tool. So they have medical training, theoretical medical training, stuff like that in there. And it's used as pretty much a promotional tool. It's given for free and it's given to their students. Google Ingress is a game made by Google. It's a mobile game currently in beta, and it's about fighting aliens at points of interest. So you go to Table Mountain, there's an alien invasion on your phone, and you have to physically go there, fight the aliens via an interface on your phone. What does Google get? They get foot traffic data. So they can walk, they can see how other people walk there, they can see how many people visit, they can see where their points of interest is, and that translates to their Maps app. So that's an interesting idea of data gathering for them. Fold is one of my favorite examples of serious games. It's a game about protein folding. Protein folding is an activity in biology, which is very important for the currently that data from protein folding goes into AIDS and cancer research. And it's a very difficult problem. You've got these incredibly long structures of molecules that need to be folded in some way. And if they're folded in different ways, they produce different effects. So they essentially wrote up the rules for that folding process. What's a better fold? What's a worse fold? And this is a very, very difficult process to brute force with a computer. And they found that in certain circumstances, people are better at solving these problems than computers can. So they source these problems out as game levels. Players sit and fiddle with these things. You can take these things, you can rotate them, twist them, fit them together, and they source that data together, and you now have data to work with for your cancer research. And it's produced some very good results. Actually, there was a paper published last year where they used this data in some significant cancer research. Alice is one of, okay, now I'm going to go over to programming serious games. Now these are two examples. These are games I've based my stuff on. Actually, it's not supposed to be three. Alice is a game which was part of an American professor's, American doctorate PhD, which was about teaching programming to young girls, specifically young girls. So what they did is they built what they called a virtual dollhouse, where you can create animated scenes through a programming language that creates. So you have some scene, and you have some methods that you can use to make this bunny jump or run or walk or whatever, or talk, and then you can make up some scene, play it out, see what happens. And some very cool results. So on a side note about this, one of these things that you can do, that I found in education, is you might not necessarily be able to teach as efficiently as you can with a classroom. But one thing that it does help with is the building of interest, because that's another part of education. So, for example, this game is just about building interest in programming amongst young women. It doesn't necessarily have to translate the skills, but as long as it's there, you can build on that. This is an actually unknown game made by, this was published in 2013 by for masters by a South African student in Vets. And it teaches conditional procedural programming. So you've got cars coming out of a tunnel that have to reach some garages, and you can then sort them by color and make super buses and cars and motorcycles. And in this way, you teach that type of procedural thinking. And he had some results in teaching introductory students. Needless to say, if you've actually done a bit of programming, this doesn't help you much because you've got this sort of there. So, my attempt at this problem was to build a game that I could give to introductory students, and then hopefully they would learn something from it. However, what we did a bit differently is I focused not on teaching them coding, but on teaching them algorithmic thinking. So, as you saw in those previous examples, and I actually missed one, there's a game called Google Blocky, which is a drag and drop code interface, but it's still code. So what mine is, it didn't have any code, it was just symbolic, and the idea was to teach the logic of programming instead of the actual coding. And secondly, we wanted to test in a very quantitative way, which didn't meet completely, but I'll go into that in a bit. And for that reason, we set up, I wanted to use some sort of language agnostic test to measure programming aptitude, and then use university marks. Programming aptitude apparently doesn't have universal tests. I thought surely someone would have done something like that in order to measure how good someone's programming, but apparently no, so we had to write that as well. I tested on second year Stellenbosch University students, and my faculty with the introductory programming course at that time, so I used those students as my guinea pigs, and I gave them the game to play in addition to the coursework. So this is the game that I made. In essence, what it is you've got this little red circle moving around these tracks. The arrows point them, so this is starting that way, that way. It picks up these colored gems. Gems have a size, so they can be triangular, square, circle, whatever. And then we have to get into some input in which they have to be configured in a different way. So, for example, this thing has a pentagon, a green symbol, and it has to become a blue square. So for this to happen, what it does, it goes around. It checks if it's a green triangle. Is it a green triangle? Checks if it's an orange triangle. If it's an orange triangle, it makes it one size smaller. So then it goes down. So that pentagon becomes a square becomes a triangle. If it's a green triangle, we go down. Green is changed to blue, we make it one square, one thing bigger. It's now a blue square. We drop it off and go back to the beginning. And you've got some configurable if statements and stuff like that. So for those of you who've done any sort of programming before, the idea that what we did, the idea of this system was to translate the concepts of conditional statements. So is it green? Loops go around till it is green, and variables that change, so make it smaller, make it bigger. And that's very basic introductory concepts, but if we give that to introductory students, we'll then more easily adapt to the actual coding interface. So one problem that you have in academia is if you test, you have to force people to help you, or they run off. So we gave students movie tickets. I told the students I'd give each of them 2 movie tickets if they participated in my system for the duration of their studies. Secondly, there are only 90 students in the class, so it's a small sample to begin with. You have to split these up into groups. Anyway, so long story short, the language agnostic test, they ran off. And I didn't have enough students there. It's promising, but not enough to academically say anything about the data. For the university marks, we measured a 6% difference at a 90% confidence interval. In other words, we're 90% sure that this is not a random happening. And this is promising considering the sample size and the fact that it's a pilot study, but give me more money so I can give students. What I would like to what I would like to do going forward with this research is take all these other examples I've shown you, put them into a big test, and measure against somewhere to measure them against each other, because that's not possible. Anyway, that's me. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lloyd Hughes. I'm the first year master student in applied mathematics at Stellenbosch. I'm doing my research into scene-aware augmented reality and implementing 3D reconstruction on a mobile phone. So I'll explain what that all means now. So firstly, let's start. What is augmented reality? So augmented reality is taking a live view of the world that you get in from a camera and adding some computer-generated aspects, either sound, video, or graphics, to this live view, and presenting the new augmented view back to the user in such a manner that it's not laggy and it doesn't obstruct the user's current view of the world. So it adds only the additional information that the user will actually find interesting. So how basic sort of augmented reality application will work is you'll get your visual input from your camera. You calculate how the camera is positioned in the world relative to whatever object you're looking at, and compile your computer-generated data and then merge the two together through some mathematical process so that they look as if the object is in the world naturally and not sort of plucked on like a bad Photoshop job. So there's some limitations. The general way people do it is what they call sparse augmented reality. So what that means is that the camera only picks up a few points in the world, so it might only know the corner of the desk there, where the door is, and where the laptop is. And those are 3 points it knows. So as you can see, you can't really project too much information in there because you don't understand how the world actually is situated. So anything you project will look a bit out of place. Also, the data that you project can't interact with that world map in any sense because there's only a few points available. So I've got a little example of this. So zoom in now. You can see it's a kitchen, and then the shelves are all augmented objects that don't actually exist. They're just sort of being plugged on. You can see that it's skew, and that if someone walks past, you've got the problem that the shelf decides to be on top of the person, which isn't ideal. So what is scene-aware augmented reality? So scene-aware augmented reality is trying to solve that problem. Is how can we make a dense reconstruction of the environment so that you can actually do occlusions properly. So if someone walks in front of the shelf, it only projects the parts that the body's not covering. The object boundary is also very well known, so you know where one object starts and another one ends. And because of this, you can allow data to interact with the virtual scene very intuitively, and also it allows for other things like 3D modeling. You can extract parts of the scene as an actual model. So what my research is looking at is how can we actually implement this on a mobile phone? Because today, this dense reconstruction or scene-aware augmented reality has only been done on very expensive high-end computers, and that's kind of impractical. You don't really want to walk around with a computer to do this. So I'm looking at how can we combine the sensors that you get on your mobile phones, their cameras, and make a system that's a lot more efficient and can actually do this in real time. So what I'm looking at is I'm looking at implementing this for use in scene-aware augmented reality, and also for 3D printing, and how can we generate objects to rapidly prototype them in the future. So these are some of the applications that we can get. We can do animation. Just you want a glass in your animated scene, you can just scan a glass. You've got the model now. You don't have to sit in a CAD program to generate the model. That also directly relates to 3D printing. Gaming, as I'll show you an example later. Navigation, tourism. So now you can suddenly walk up to a building, scan a section, it can bring up information about the building. But the stained glass window was designed by this person, and you get a lot more depth of information rather than just a few points in some geolocation. Training is some nice examples of how do you set up your router. You take a scan of the back of the router, and animated sort of video comes in and plugs the Ethernet cables in the right places. These are all things that have been done, but they've always been done on very high-end systems. So I'm trying to look at how to move this down to a mobile platform. And architecture and design, you could scan a room and put a bed in that you want and see how your bed looks in your new houses. Or does it fit? Do I need to buy a new one? That sort of thing. So let's look at what 3D printing actually is. Why did this pop up? So 3D printing is an additive process where an extruded material generally is layered on top of each other to form the full object. So there's a few main materials. We use plastics for sort of hobbyist projects. Those are the cheap 3D printers that you can buy online quite readily. They use PLA or ABS plastic. Manufacturing industries use metal, and the jewelry industry use wax to cast jewelry pieces, and medical industry use it to print new ears and hearts and whatever for people. There's quite a lot of research going into that these days. So yeah, so what you do is, if you've got a model of an object like that, it will break it up into layers and sort of do a rough estimated shape. You can control the thickness of those layers, and obviously the finer you get them, the smoother the object is. And then it becomes an extrusion process where some plastic will be extruded in tiny little strips and just layered on top of each other to form the full object. Actually, we have the thing like that. And then so I'll show an example of rapid prototyping. So I've got a little example of something 3D printed. I'll pass it around just now. Look at it. So this is an example of rapid prototyping. Let's say you've got a stair where you've got a nice chip out the corner. You want to fix it. You take a video of the object, generate a 3D model. So it generates a model of the stair. You can, with a little bit of CAD work, you can get the part you need to add in, mess around with it, 3D print a new piece, and physically augment your reality by placing that in the chipped object. So this becomes very powerful for farmers or anyone sort of small industrials or small micro manufacturing sense where something breaks and you need a quick replacement and you can't wait for it to be machined. You could quickly scan the object, print a replacement, put it in while you wait for the actual part to come in, or when printing gets to a high enough quality, that could actually be a replacement part. For gaming, it becomes quite a nice thing where there's just a workspace that's been modeled using the video stream, and this little car has been added into it. And as you see, you can drive your car around the workspace and jump it up and whatever. And it interacts with the world as you would expect it to interact, not sort of in a less realistic way. So some of the challenges of this are cell phones are really bad. The sensors are horrible on them. So there's three main sensors: gyroscopes, accelerometers, and magnetometers. And on a phone, they took the cheapest of all of them. So it becomes quite a challenge to link all that data together to try and get something out of it. If you move your phone near anything metal, it just falls apart. So I've come up with ways to sort of fix some of those issues. Also, cell phone cameras, you have something which they call a rolling shutter. If you want to see some really weird videos, just YouTube what a rolling shutter does. Basically, it doesn't expose the whole camera sensor at the same time. It exposes line by line, so straight lines suddenly become skew. And if you've got something like a fan, you don't see the individual fan blades, you'd rather just see some strange lines drifting off in one direction. If you videotape a guitar, you can actually see the strings vibrating. And that's not the video speed, that's just the rolling shutter that allows you to do that. So my challenge is, how can I take all this information from bad sensors and combine them to get a very good, accurate estimate of the camera position? Because obviously, if you get a good estimate of the camera position in the world, that will allow you to have a very good reconstruction. And the better the reconstruction, the better all these other applications work. So far what I've done is I've done feature tracking and pose estimation. So that's pretty much how do I know where the camera is in the 3D world. So somehow I magically initialize 3D points in the world. That's still a manual process at the moment. I'm trying to automate that. So that's how do you get your first map, because the whole system relies on you already knowing some points in the world space. Then how do I take features detected in the camera frames and match those to the map so that I can estimate where the camera is relative to where it was throughout as the camera moves around. And then I reproject the features that I already have in the map back just to check the accuracy. So I've got a little video of this. The blue is the features that the image processing algorithms detect, and you probably cannot see it because I can't. There's little red crosses inside there, I promise you, and that's the reprojected features. So you can see as you move the camera around, there are times where there are red dots in the wrong place, and that's where the pose estimate isn't 100% correct. This is just visual, this is without any sensor data, so hopefully when I combine the sensor data, that should become a lot more accurate. And then, how do we do a sparse map with this? Because obviously, you don't want to keep a dense map of the world while you're trying to just predict where the camera is, because that's going to get very, very spatially intense, which isn't good for mobile applications. You're trying to cut down the speed and the space. So all I'm doing is I'm keeping a sparse map to localize the camera, and then the dense stuff can be done some other time in the background. So what we do is we need to detect which of these frames, using the pose that we've estimated, how can we detect which of these frames are actually good frames, because you get motion blur and all other things which will destroy the system. Once we detect which are good frames, we can then reproject those back and create or add to the map using the keyframes that we've saved. and make our map bigger so we can actually move away from the initial point we were. And when you come back to the initial point, you'll be able to map back and say, okay, we've done a full circle, we're back where we started. And then all the other frames that I've got the pose for, because I get the pose for every single frame, all of those don't go to waste. I use those to optimize these keyframes. So you get very, very good keyframes, which means they get a very good reconstruction. So if, for instance, this is a well-known data set in the computer vision side, I've used my system on, but just assuming that these are the keyframes from this image. This was just an image of a bus taken in a circle. And when you run my system saying that these are the keyframes, you manage to get quite a nice sparse reconstruction of the bus, as well as how the cameras moved around it. And this is where it started. You can see it's got the start and end were more or less in the same place. So you can use that to localize the camera for future frames. I think we get questions.
I am Simon Villarevere. I finished now my thesis, and I'm very excited about Bitcoin. I'm spending most of my time now these days. I think Bitcoin is one of the most exciting things to come along since the internet. Other people seem to agree. Influential people like Bill Gates said Bitcoin is a technological tour de force. Fred Wilson, which is VC investor on Twitter, says we believe that Bitcoin represents something fundamental and powerful. Paul Graham, founder of Y Combinator, said it has all the science. It's a paradigm shift. Hackers love it, yet it's derided as a toy. I don't think these days so much anymore. And it was exactly like microcomputers when it started. And then Chamath, which was early Facebook exit, also VC, said with Bitcoin we are completely entering a world of uncharted water. And then Richard Brown, which is IBM's exec architect in banking, said cryptocurrencies are going to change the world. So I'm going to introduce this now. I have 10 minutes, so I haven't tried to explain it to people in 10 minutes. I'll try. I'm going to skip over the more technical implementations and just explain the useful features. So what is Bitcoin? Bitcoin is the world's first decentralized digital currency that functions through a shared ledger that is secured through the innovative use of cryptography. And I'll explain basically those three concepts, which forms the core of it. Then I'll explain what it allows, the implications of it, and what's going to happen in the future, and sort of the interesting thought experiments around this new system. So what does it mean if it's decentralized? And I think this is a concept that's very difficult to understand, because in the whole of history, money has been printed by someone. There was a central institution, a central bank, a company that printed e-bucks or whatever. Through the course of history, there was always a central issuer. There was someone that mined the gold and gave it to someone else. There was always a central person or institution. With Bitcoin, that's not the case. It's decentralized. There's no central issuer. There's no company or bank or Bitcoin Incorporated that decides I'm going to open a shop and give Bitcoin to people. Part of the decentralized concept is that it's completely open source. The code is on GitHub. If you know your way around C++, you can go look at the code and see that there's no pyramid scheme happening here. There's no one manufacturing them and giving them out. The way Bitcoins come into circulation, if you think about the central bank, the usual way is like they print money, give it to other banks, and then it proliferates into the rest of the economic system. Bitcoins are introduced into the system by a predetermined rate that's built into the protocol of this whole system. And I'll explain now who gets them, because that's one of the more interesting things that people question. It's like, who actually gets these Bitcoins? And it's important to clarify that what's happening here is that, like, the other term people use for this is math-based currencies. Is that maths or algorithms are replacing the role of people and institutions. So what I said when it says about predetermined rates, basically Bitcoins are being released to the system by a predetermined rate that's accepted by the protocol and the network. And what it means is, over time, less and less Bitcoins are being introduced. We are now in 2013, which is in this line here, which means 25 Bitcoins are being released into the system every 10 minutes. And I'll explain who gets those Bitcoins. The next part is basically the core of the thinking about how it actually fits together. And it's essentially a shared ledger. which is called blockchain in Bitcoin vocabulary. If you think about a central institution like a bank or a company, they have ledgers there, and the purpose of the ledgers are to tabulate how the money flows in that business, in and out and so forth. But with Bitcoin, all the computers on a network, when they have the Bitcoin software, they have a copy of a ledger. And when you make a transaction in this ledger, say I, Simon, pay someone 5 Bitcoins, I update the shared ledger, but then I also tell all the other people who has copies of the ledger, you guys must update this ledger to show that this transaction happened. I like to think about, I like to use the metaphor of a set of post office boxes, because it's this idea that there's this big block of addresses or post boxes where, on a digital scale, let's say you have a set of post office boxes that anyone can access from around the world, and you have a key to unlock only your box. So when I make a transaction, what essentially happens is I'm opening up my post office box, take my Bitcoins out and give it to this person in that address. And on a global scale, this thing is essentially happening the whole time, with points being passed around different addresses in the system. Okay, so the problem, however, is that let's say you have a shared ledger, and you think about it in the digital scale, things can be easily copied. How do you verify whose ledger is the correct one? If someone says to me, that guy paid that person that much, how do I know that authority to do that? And that's where the last part comes in, which is the innovative use of cryptography. So the Bitcoin, if you run Bitcoin software on your computer, you form part of this massive peer-to-peer network of computers that serve 2 purposes. It makes you capable of transacting within the network, but it also serves another purpose, an important purpose. It helps to secure and verify this shared ledger that's being passed around in this network. When your computer helps to verify and secure it, there's a specific case where you've shown that the computer has shown the correct amount of work that it's properly verified and secured network. That computer or node on the network is rewarded with Bitcoins, and that's how Bitcoins come into existence. The computers that help verify and secure the system are being rewarded with the Bitcoins. So going back to this graph, every 10 minutes there are Bitcoins being introduced into the system, given to the computers that help verify this network. Until the end of last year, there were 15 Bitcoins released to every node on the system that helped to verify it every 10 minutes. Now it's been halved, it's now 25 Bitcoins every 10 minutes, and as the graph showed, it will eventually slow down up to a point where there will only eventually be 21 million Bitcoins in existence. It's a finite cap, it will not be any more created. It's not a central bank that can issue more money, do quantitative easing, nothing like that. There's only a finite amount, limited supply. So, there's now about 11 million already in existence out of the potential 21 million. And the interesting is, the 21 million will only be fully completed in the year 2140. So it's a very long logarithmic graph. So what? What's the point? I mean, why would I use Bitcoin if I could just use cash or dollars or anything? What this system creates, there will eventually be 21 million Bitcoin in existence that can be traded instantly anywhere across the world if you have internet connection. It requires very, very small fees. If I say it costs 50 cents, it's for any size transaction. It's not calculated based on the amount. It's calculated on how large the transaction is in terms of the digital size, like how many kilobytes it is. So I can transfer it to someone across the world $12 million, and it's going to cost me 50 cents. And it's more secure than any current payment network that exists. But really, no. Why should I bother? What will it help me if I would use Bitcoin? What am I going to get out of it? The first thing is that it allows for very easy payments. It's native to the digital world we currently live in. There's no intermediaries anymore. There's no banks. I don't have to pay fees for people that are just basically doing the same thing and changing numbers in their digital systems. The other thing is you have protection against bad monetary management. There's an example of Argentina, which is 25% inflation, and what they're seeing with the markets is that Bitcoin in Argentina is priced higher than the US dollar prices because people want Bitcoins because it's a hedge against governments that are devaluing their currency that they're holding. You can transact with the world with any device even feature phones can work with the Bitcoin network. It allows international payments. I can pay my brother who's living in Taiwan 5 Bitcoins for a beer. You can go do that. And finally, it's pseudonymous, which means you have some level of anonymity that's not possible with. It's not completely anonymous, but it's more anonymous than the current systems, and no one can swipe your credit card and commit fraud with your credit card. Why will businesses bother? This is a quote by public spokesperson for KMG in Hollywood, and she basically said that they pass money along in their company in so many ways, different currencies and stuff, and they're thinking of moving their whole system into Bitcoin because of all the cost savings that will happen. If you're a business, it's the lowest fees that you'll pay. There's no credit card, credit card transactions. There's zero chargebacks. It's like cash. If you give money to someone, they run away, you can't get it back. So there's no idea of chargebacks. You can accept payments from anywhere. There's a story of a guy in Berlin that asked his buddy in Brazil to pay for his beer, and that you can do that. The guy doesn't have to be there to pay for the beer. There's no PCI compliance required. Security is good enough. That's why it's needed. And companies already facilitating this network to pay out into dollars and rands are charging extremely low fees because they can carry the cost savings from Bitcoin into the rest of the system. So what are the implications of Bitcoin? One of the things I think that's the first thing that's going to disrupt is the remittance markets, because it's now, instead of having to go through banks or Western Union, MoneyGram, or PayPal to be able to give someone money in a different part of the world, you only have to exchange this one token, which is Bitcoin. So if someone else across the world wants that Bitcoin, then it's just two hop. Like I get a Bitcoin, they take a Bitcoin, and trade a Bitcoin back into their currency if they want. The other thing is that it provides financial tools to the world's unbanked people. Poor banks don't want to give services to poor people because the margins are too low. So, but now with a phone, you can, just with having a feature phone, you can have access to financial services, such as you can accumulate wealth more than keeping cash under your mattress, or you can even have access such as to service like escrow, which is built into the Bitcoin services. These are more like interesting just thought experiments, is that because there exists now a digital currency that is out of control of national jurisdiction, central banks are using power to manipulate the economy, which, depending on your idea of whether central banks are a good thing or a bad thing, it depends. And you look at countries like China, which is saying, we don't want, we want to trade within the BRICS with our own currencies, or like what they recently did is they bought euros without the US dollar as the reserve currency. It's an apolitical reserve currency. So it might be that countries decide we don't want to work with the political baggage of using the US dollar. What next? The next 5 years is going to be awesome and interesting. Some of the things that people see in this, besides a currency, is that it allows certain things that currently isn't possible with traditional financial systems. One of them is micropayments. Because of the low fees and the way the network works, you can pay per second or pay per kilobyte. You can pay for 10 seconds of listening to a song, and the costs will be so little that people usually that doesn't happen because somewhere along the line someone has to do a credit card transaction, and that will be fee. So you don't want someone to pay 10 cents on a credit card. It's pointless. There's stuff built in that you can do like multi-second transactions that's perfect for dispute mediations. The other thing that I find particularly exciting and what I'm working on and looking towards is the idea that now that you have programmable money, which exists only in the digital realm, programs or machines can transact on equal levels with humans, which can allow things like self-driving cars owning themselves and people paying them to drive them around. And this is quote by Richard Brown at the end says it's perfectly, because programs can transact with this thing equally to humans. When you look at Bitcoin blockchain, you'll never realize if it's just your fridge buying some milk. And that's the end of that. I think I don't know if